Dissertation, which, I'm not in the middle, I started in last December, November. So I'm gonna answer three questions. What am I doing? Give you a brief, I'll talk briefly about what am I doing, why am I doing this, and how am I doing this. The main thing is my work is about understanding the experience of Palestinian academics who moved from Palestine to the UK and the challenges they face, whether in Palestine or in the UK. And this is framed by theory of Giorgio Agamben, the Italian philosopher, which is about the state of exception, a state where all your rights are suspended. And this represents our lives as Palestinian, and my life in particular. For example, I will read a story in a bit, but my whole life is a kind of suspension. So I will give an example that I told Alan about, and I said that many times in different situations. It was about the first step in my life coming to this country. I was waiting 6 months to get my permission from the Israeli side to cross the borders and travel from Jordan to the UK. I applied for the visa, I got the visa, everything was okay, but in order to travel, just to understand the situation in Palestine, we have no airport, or we used to have one, but it was targeted and destroyed. So I was waiting for 6 months just to travel, and luckily the university kept extending my enrollment. And the point was that you apply for a permission and they never tell you when you will get it. They say, okay, you will be called one day and we will ask you to leave the next morning. And like 2 or 3 of the stories are about this issue. So they just call, tell you or ask you to leave the next morning. And for 6 months, I was just waiting this call. And whenever I have a call, I expect it to be the Israeli authorities, and unfortunately it is a friend or a relative or someone. So I was waiting for 6 months. My suitcases are packed, my furniture is in boxes. I'm just waiting. I couldn't even have a leave from work or anything, just because it all depends on a call. And suddenly they called me and they asked me to leave the next morning, and in a few hours I needed to say bye to many people, especially my family, because I know that I will travel, I will stay here for at least 3 years. I would not be able to come back because borders are closed. If I go back, I won't be able to, there is a big chance that I can't come to the UK again. So this what was for the suitcases and other 4. We were living like that. We decided to just to do this so that whenever we call, we leave. And after the first week, for example, for food, we decided to have delivery for a week, and we said it's okay if we have food for a week from restaurants, but a week, another. Then we started like opening the boxes, take a knife, a fork, a dish, and it was 6 months of wait. So this is all about.
Is it all right to pass that round?
Yeah, please.
Do you want me to just pass the top one, or?
Yeah. So I will read part of the first story, and then we will talk about it. It is all about this. This is my ID. I'm Palestinian. I spent 13 years to get it because I was not born in Palestine. I was born in Kuwait, and when I come back to Palestine, because it is issued by Israeli authorities, I applied for that, and it took 13 years. In 13 years, again, it is the conception of suspension. I'm waiting for that. There is no indicators, nothing about it. They don't say that it will be issued next month, next year, no. And for 13 years, I couldn't travel. I had some scholarships I couldn't travel because the first condition is to have legal residency in your country. And I was, it was more than 50,000 Palestinians who have the same case. And you can imagine if you get sick, you need an operation or you need to be treated in Jordan or Egypt, you can't. So you may suffer just because of suspension. And the term, I don't think it means anything to anyone in the world. Okay, I will read the first story or some excerpt of it. My identification, the small green paper, which may mean nothing to any British or American or even European person, is one of the most, if not the most important documents in my whole life. I was born in Kuwait, and as such, I didn't have the right to obtain an ID of my home country because I was not born there. Those who are born outside Palestine are not entitled to have an ID and struggle for years to get one, provided that they apply to the Israeli authorities in a process that may last tens of years. In 1992, after Operation Desert Storm, my father decided to leave Kuwait and travel to Iraq, despite having a very good job at the best university in Kuwait. Because of the support of the Palestinian president Yasser Arafat showed to the Iraqis during the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990, the Palestinian people in Kuwait began facing a lot of pressure to leave Kuwait, especially from the government. They began facing a lot of pressure to leave Kuwait, where more than 750,000 Palestinians were living. Because of the pressure we felt from the Kuwaitis, especially the government, we decided to move to Iraq, where we lived subsequently for 4 years. I still remember that I cried a lot when we arrived at Safwan, the crossing point between Iraq and Kuwait. I was 16 at that time, but I had the feeling of going to the unknown. So this is the part, the first story in my dissertation, and now I'm in the process of writing the stories and then, and weaving the theories in the stories. So, I'm using this collection of stories, and I'm trying to talk about the experience of Palestinian family. At the beginning, I wanted to interview 4 Palestinian families in Leeds, London, and Bristol. But then, because my background was my second degree, my master's degree was in creative writing, so this is one of the reasons behind which I decided to not to go to the orthodox, to the traditional way of research. I found that telling stories is more evocative. It gives me the chance to tell what I want to tell through stories. And I will just give you another. This is a collection of poems of my father, who passed away while I was here, just to give you something to understand what it means to be Palestinian, to have all your rights suspended, to live like what Agamben called a bare life, where in Palestine we live in what is called a camp, a very big camp, where all your basic rights are suspended. You have no electricity, no, you can't move, you can't travel, you can't, and war could be launched any moment. And this is, I'm showing this because each story is accompanied with one of the photos. So this is the building where I live, and the red arrow is my flat in the 8th floor. You can. And this is what it means to live 16 hours without electricity, where electricity is just for 3-4 hours a day. So I was talking about about this book. It was popular just a few weeks before coming here, and this is what I mean. This is one of the things that made me start thinking about telling my own story, although it is my personal one, to narrate it to others and apply, to frame that with the theory of Agamben, just to pose a new question, to present the suffering in a new way, rather than the way we used to learn in Gaza. In Gaza, when you have your master's degree or bachelor or even or any other degree, the point is that you are dictated what to do, what to learn, what to memorize, what to discuss. And I still remember in doing my first degree, we have a friend from Canada who came to study in Palestine, and obviously his English is perfect. And the way he thinks is really interesting, and I was enjoying talking with him, to him. But one day, which, although my memory is not that good, but I still remember that lectures like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, in 2001. He came and we were studying Robinson Crusoe, and the lecturer was talking about one of the themes or one of the situation in and the guy, his name is Ashraf, said something about like he's seeing something differently. No, I don't think this is what was meant by the author. I think it was blah blah blah, which was like the whole class, the whole group of students were silent, and one of them said that's really rude. And he was just expressing himself, and because the lecturer doesn't accept you to think or to have your own theme. So what happens with many lecturers that you have the theme. This is the theme of the story, of the poem, or whatever. The themes are 1, 2, 3. The answer in the exam should be 1, 2, 3. The 1, 2, 3. And if you try just to have your own opinion, like a lot, and I'm not exaggerating, a lot of doctors or lecturers think that you are challenging them. You are trying to prove something that they didn't understand, which means you are trying to be smarter than them. And this is the way we spent 4 years. We didn't learn a lot in terms of like arguing, discussing, understanding these things. So this was one of the things that encouraged me to adopt this approach, just to tell the audience that we can do this, we can do that, we can understand things differently, and this is one of the strengths of telling a story or using art-based method research, like to have multiple meaning, because what I see in a way from this story, you can see it in another way. It is from right to left, so it will be a little bit. So this was really one of the things that I started thinking of telling my own story. I didn't know at that time, last year, it was last year when he passed away, I didn't know how could I use the stories, because my second degree, as I told you, was in creative writing, so I'm not used to the traditional way of researching, and doing the parts of research, because my dissertation was a collection of stories, and that's it, with some analysis of that, and that's it. So I was trying to convey this, because this is happening with a lot of people, and having Agamben, reading Agamben, I felt that it is the best, or one of the best theories and conceptions to talk or to describe that. The challenge was weaving the stories, the theories in the stories, and then presenting that to people. I will read another another excerpt in which there is another theory about nomadism. We became nomads. It was not that we went out and wandered in the desert, but our relationship to space changed. We became unfixed, deteriorated, mobile. Nomadism became part of our lives whenever we were. In 1996, we decided to return to Gaza Strip. My brothers and sisters and I couldn't believe that we were able to return to our hometown. It was something impossible for us to imagine. However, we applied for permission from the Israeli authorities to visit Gaza for 30 days, and we were granted it. When we arrived, it was a strange feeling to live in your country while you know that you are breaching the Israeli law by staying for more than 30 days. Also, felt preserved to be in one country but still subject to the laws of another, as if you had become suspended in a zone of uncertainty about your own legal status. Palestine was so real. It was the location of my origin, the place to which I had been taught to look towards as the source of all my identity and the identities of my families and friends. Nothing could be more real. Embodied in the streets and buildings and the grounds of the place. And yet it was also unreal. While I was there, in the place of my origin, I was also entirely at the mercy of absolute Israeli power. So, this is another story in which I try to weave the nomadism theory which talk about